Have you ever wondered why you feel drained after certain conversations, even though nothing explosive was said? Why you walk away from a woman you like with a strange knot in your chest, like you lost something, though you gave everything? That's not love. That's a boundary being crossed, quietly, repeatedly, until you stop recognizing yourself. Most men don't even notice when it starts. You're taught to be generous, to be patient, to prove yourself. So when she pulls back emotionally, you lean in. When she gets cold, you try to warm things up. You think that if you just explain better, listen harder, or show her more of your heart, she'll come around. But she doesn't. She just steps back further, waits longer, says less. And now you're chasing. Not because you're weak, but because you thought giving was the way to be loved. Imagine this: you're dating a woman who, at first, laughs at your jokes, texts you back within minutes, compliments your mind. You feel seen. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, she starts changing the rhythm. One day she ignores your text. The next day she responds, but short. No explanation. Just colder. You ask if something's wrong. She says nothing, but you feel it. Now your chest is tight, and you're trying harder again. You buy her dinner, try to impress her with little surprises, hold back your own disappointment because you don't want to be too much. But what are you actually doing? You're abandoning yourself to preserve something that's slipping through your fingers. This is how men lose themselves. Not in one dramatic explosion, but in 1,000 quiet compromises they were too ashamed to call out. They sense the disrespect, but they don't want to seem insecure. They feel the emotional manipulation, but they convince themselves she's just going through something. No, what's happening is this: your boundary is being tested and you're failing the test. You don't need a woman to hit you to be abused. All she needs to do is withdraw affection strategically, delay emotional validation until you break, and then reward you when you submit. That's intermittent reinforcement. It's the same tactic casinos use: make you lose enough to crave a win, then throw you crumbs just in time to keep you hooked. And here's where the pain deepens, because you weren't told any of this. You were raised to believe that if you just held out long enough, if you loved her more than any man had, before she would see your worth. But women don't fall in love with effort. They fall in love with presence, with clarity, with the man who doesn't fold just because she's folding. So what do? You start with silence. When she pulls away, you don't chase, you don't explain. You don't try to fix what she hasn't even acknowledged as broken. You mirror, not to manipulate, but to protect. She goes distant, you go quiet. She says nothing, you match the energy, not coldly, not vengefully, calmly, with full ownership of your soul. Because you're not here to earn your way into being respected. You're here to see clearly who respects you without negotiation. She'll notice, she'll text, she'll say you're different now. She might even cry. That's not the time to run back. That's the test. Can you hold your center when she tries to pull you off it? A boundary is not a wall. It's a door that stays closed until someone knocks with respect. If you leave it open all the time, you're not being loving, you're being invaded. And over time, that invasion rots your spirit. You lose your humor, your ambition fades. You start doubting your instincts. You call it love, but it's self-abandonment. You call it patience, but it's fear of being alone. Let me give you a story. A man I once coached had a girlfriend who would go dark every time he made plans without her. He'd tell her he was going out with friends, and suddenly she'd get vague headaches, go cold on text, or post passive-aggressive things online. He thought he was hurting her, so he started canceling on his friends, staying home to make her feel safe. Over months, he lost his social life. His confidence faded. Then she left him, saying he was boring. She wasn't evil, But he had trained her to control him by hurting herself. He was more afraid of her silence than he was of losing himself. That's the cost of no boundaries. So, if you're listening to this, ask yourself right now, where have you let your standards slip just to keep her close? What was the first moment, that little twist in your gut that you ignored? And if she pulled away tomorrow, would you panic or pause? This isn't about punishing women. It's about protecting men from losing their compass. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to play games. But you do have to choose in every moment whether your peace matters more than her approval. Have you ever done this and didn't realize it pushed her away? Tell me what happened. What's the hardest thing you've faced when trying to keep a woman interested? Drop your story below. Which mistake do you see yourself making the most? Be honest in the comments. Most men don't realize they're being tested until the damage is done. She doesn't call it a test. She might not even know she's doing it. But it is a test, one that plays out not in words, but in silence, pauses, delayed replies, subtle jabs. She's watching how you respond when she removes warmth. Do you collapse? Do you chase? Do you beg for crumbs like they're gold? If you do, she learns something critical. She learns that she can move you emotionally without giving anything. That she can withhold presence and still own your focus. That she can pull you out of your center not by shouting, not by cheating, but by doing nothing at all. That's how control works in modern dating. It's not always loud. It's not always obvious. Sometimes, it's the quiet dismissal of your time, the slow devaluation of your voice, the way she talks over you when you're sharing something that matters, the way her praise goes extinct the moment you stop jumping through hoops. And the more you tolerate it, the more she respects you less, even if she stays. Because women don't fall for the man who lets her lead the emotional dance. They fall for the man who stands still in the storm, who doesn't flinch when she pulls back, who doesn't send 3 follow-up texts just to feel seen, who doesn't drop his plans just to stay on her good side. But let's talk tactics. The next time you feel her start to withdraw, I want you to do nothing. That's right, nothing. Don't react. Don't analyze. Don't reach. Don't try to reclaim the emotional temperature. Let it get cold. Let her notice your stillness. Let her sit in the silence she created. Here's what that does psychologically. It breaks the loop. It sends a signal not with words, but with energy that your emotions are not up for negotiation. That if someone removes themselves, you will not chase them into the fire. That you are a man who knows how to walk away from manipulation, even if it's dressed up as vulnerability. And here's what usually happens next. She panics, not immediately, but over time. When she realizes that the old lever doesn't work on you anymore. When she can't shake you with distance, or bait you with silence. That's when she comes back, not always with words, but with attention, with effort, with questions. And in that moment, most men crumble. They mistake the return for resolution. Don't. That's where the boundary lives, right there, in the moment of return. You don't punish her, you don't reward her, you simply meet her with the same standard you wish she had met you with. She asks why you're off. You say calmly, I just started paying attention. She asks why you didn't call. You say, I didn't feel the invitation. She starts testing again. You remove yourself with peace. Not to hurt her, but to remind yourself you're not here to be pulled into emotional games. Because here's the truth. No one tells you the moment you break your own boundary. You're teaching her how to disrespect you. And she will. Not because she's cruel, but because she's human. We all test the people closest to us, even unconsciously. The question is, will you pass that test? And if you're thinking, but what if she leaves? Then I'll ask you this. What exactly are you trying to hold on to? A connection that costs you your self-respect. A dynamic that only works when you abandon your standards. That's not a relationship. That's emotional extortion with a pretty face. You want to know who thrives in modern dating? It's not the loud guy. It's not the rich guy. It's the guy who knows what he will and won't tolerate and actually sticks to it. The man who doesn't explain his boundaries with a PowerPoint presentation. The man who doesn't try to convince her why he's valuable. The man who walks away quietly when the energy goes wrong and doesn't slam the door behind him. You think that kind of man is alone? No. He's the one they whisper about. The one who feels different. The one they can't quite control. That's magnetic. That's respect. That's where attraction grows in the space between I want you and I don't need you. I once knew a guy who spent a year trying to win back a woman who ghosted him after 2 months of dating. She reappeared, apologized, said she was dealing with personal things. He welcomed her back instantly. No questions, no hesitation. 2 weeks later, she ghosted him again. That time, for good. You know what he said to me. I just didn't want to scare her off by making her explain herself. But what he really feared was this being alone with his own standards. Because standards require courage. They require you to sit with silence, to risk being misunderstood, to be okay with someone leaving when you finally say enough. So ask yourself, where in your life have you made it too easy to be mistreated? Where have you trained her to believe that you'll stay no matter how cold she gets? What part of yourself have you betrayed just to keep her from walking away? What would change if you were finally willing to let her walk not out of anger, but out of power? Tell me below, have you ever let a woman come back too easily? What happened after that? Where do you draw the line now? And how did you learn? Which behaviors do you now recognize as emotional manipulation? Let's talk in the comments. There's a quiet moment. Most men never talk about the moment when you know something's wrong, but you stay anyway. You feel the shift. Her texts lose warmth. Her voice changes. The spark you used to hear when your name lit up her screen, gone. And still, you wait. You make excuses for her. She's busy. She's tired. Maybe she's just stressed. Maybe if you show her more care, remind her how good you are, she'll remember. That moment is where your boundaries should speak, but most men silence it. They trade clarity for hope. They wait in the emotional waiting room, hoping her mood swings settle, her attention returns, her eyes soften again. But here's the brutal truth: the longer you wait without action, the more she loses respect for you. Because women don't fall for men who cling to fading moments. They fall for the ones who notice the shift and walk before their soul gets twisted trying to fix it. You think love means staying through her cold spells, but often, those cold spells aren't emotional weather. They're power plays, subtle checks to see if you'll break your own rules to stay near her warmth. She doesn't say, "I'm testing you." She just disappears for hours, then drops a dry LOL when you finally get her attention again. And you take that lol like it's a lifeline. Stop. Every time you reward distance with attention, you're training her to withdraw more. You're teaching her that you'll always be there, even when she's not. That your presence is a given while hers is a privilege. That your love is unconditional and hers is performance-based. Now let's flip it. Let's say you set a boundary. She pulls back. You match the energy. No anger, no passive aggression. You just stop overreaching. You keep your voice low, your movements calm. You don't ask for attention. You don't beg for clarification. You simply remove yourself. Now she's confused. She expected you to chase. She expected guilt. She expected a man who needs her to feel secure. But instead, she finds a man who can feel her absence and not panic. That's where the dynamic resets. That's where respect starts. Because women don't stay for comfort. They stay for polarity, for mystery, for the man who isn't afraid to lose her, who doesn't measure his worth by her approval, who doesn't flinch when she gets quiet, moody, distant because his internal compass doesn't depend on her forecast. And no, this isn't about being cold or heartless. It's about being self-possessed. It's about being the kind of man who knows the difference between a connection and a leash. Let me tell you about a guy I once worked with. He was dating a woman who would constantly say things like, "You're too sensitive," or "You're being dramatic," every time he tried to express a feeling. At first, he brushed it off. Then he started doubting himself. Every time he felt disrespected or ignored, he'd wonder, am I overreacting? Eventually, he stopped speaking up altogether. He became agreeable, predictable, silent, and she left him saying he wasn't emotionally strong enough. Do you see the trap? She taught him that expressing emotion made him weak. He obeyed. He made himself small. He kept the peace. But she didn't want peace. She wanted presence. She wanted a man who could feel deeply and still stand firm. That's the mistake many men make, confusing silence with strength. But true strength isn't about shutting down. It's about setting the boundary and standing by it, even when it shakes your knees. It's not about avoiding confrontation. It's about choosing dignity over desperation. So how do you start? You get honest with yourself. Where have you tolerated behavior that made you shrink? Where have you apologized just to stop her from leaving? Where have you lost sleep wondering what you did wrong? When deep down, you know she crossed a line. Write those answers down. Don't just think them. Own them. Then the next time she pulls away, does the hot-cold dance, ignores your message while posting on social media. You don't react, you observe. And if the pattern continues, you don't explain, you don't beg, you leave. Not loudly, not dramatically, just gone. Because your boundary isn't something you threaten with, it's something you enforce quietly. And here's the twist when you finally hold your ground. The right woman doesn't run. She respects it. She adjusts. She learns that your soul has a lock, and not everyone gets the key just because they smiled at you once. But the wrong woman, she'll call you toxic. She'll say you're controlling. She'll try to shame you back into being soft and agreeable. Let her reveal that she only loved the version of you who didn't love himself. Let her speak and don't defend yourself. Because when a man knows his worth, he doesn't explain it to people committed to misunderstanding it. What's a boundary you wish you had set earlier? Drop it in the comments. Have you ever sacrificed your standards just to keep her around? What did it cost you? What's the difference between staying patient and betraying yourself? Let's hear your take. You ever sit across from a woman and feel like you're auditioning not for love, for worth? You're saying the right things, being agreeable, listening, nodding, smiling just enough, hiding that twist in your gut when she mentions another guy's name casually, like she's testing you, and instead of calling it out, you laugh along, play it cool, because the last thing you want to seem is insecure. But deep down, you feel it, that something inside you is being bent, twisted, molded into something softer, quieter, easier to keep. That's what happens when a man has no boundaries. He becomes a version of himself designed for survival, not for truth. He plays it safe, hoping she'll stay. But the very act of trying not to lose her guarantees, he will. Because women aren't attracted to men who orbit. They're drawn to men who occupy. Men who walk into a room and don't scan it for permission to exist. So why do so many men give that up? Because we were trained to, from a young age. Boys are taught that making others comfortable is what makes you good. That if you just make her happy, make her laugh, make her feel secure, she'll never leave. So you overextend. You soften your tone. You make plans around her mood, her schedule, her energy. And in doing so, You disappear. You become background noise. The guy who's always available. The one she calls when she's bored. The one she appreciates so much, but never quite chooses. And the more you give, the more confused you become. Because now your mind starts justifying. She's just busy. She's not ready. She's been hurt before. You create a psychological narrative to excuse behavior that disrespects you. That's the trap, confusing empathy with self-erasure. You can understand her wounds without bleeding for them. You can care about her story without letting it rewrite your own. And here's how it plays out in real time. She flakes on plans and you say, "No worries." She says she's not ready for anything serious and you say, "I'm good just being around you." She posts thirst traps on Instagram and you comment something sweet. She talks about her ex and you nod politely, swallowing the insult. She withdraws affection and you double down with compliments. That isn't strength. That's emotional submission. It's hoping that your kindness will unlock her respect. But respect doesn't come from giving more than she asked for. It comes from giving exactly what you value and taking it away when it's not met with honor. Let me tell you about a guy I knew, Marcus. Smart, successful, great with people. He started dating a woman who kept him at arm's length emotionally, but used him for stability. She'd cancel dates last minute, but then show up when she needed help with something. She'd disappear for days, then send a late-night text, "Miss you." And every time, Marcus would show up. He told himself it was patience, that she was scared, that love meant understanding her trauma, but all she learned was that she didn't have to respect him to keep him. The day he stopped replying, she blew up. "I thought you cared about me." He did. He just finally realized he had to care about himself more. That's the shift. When you stop being afraid of her leaving and start being afraid of losing yourself. Because at some point, you have to ask, what version of me am I becoming just to stay in her orbit? Is that version proud? Is he strong? Is he honest? Is he free? And if the answer is no, then why are you still there? Here's the hard reality most men avoid. The only way to know your true value is to walk away when it's not seen. You will never be fully respected by a woman who benefits from your weakness. So how do you build that kind of strength? It starts with this sentence: "That's not enough for me." Say it the next time she flakes. Say it when she dismisses your needs. Say it when she gives you half effort and expects full devotion. Say it calmly, quietly, without rage, without a need for her to agree, because your worth doesn't require her agreement. It requires your enforcement. And the men who live by that, they don't attract chaos. They attract peace, because they've made peace the cost of access. Tell me, when was the moment you realized you were giving too much? What finally made you stop? What's the most painful thing you tolerated in the name of understanding? Have you ever said that's not enough for me? If not, what's stopping you? There comes a moment when you sit alone, no noise, no texts, no dopamine buzz from a half-hearted "I miss you," and you finally hear the question your gut's been whispering for weeks. Why am I still here? Not physically, emotionally, mentally, energetically. Why are you still clinging to someone who has shown you with action, not words that they don't value your presence the way you've been taught to value theirs? This is the final crack in the illusion, the one that hurts the most, because it's not just about her anymore. It's about what you've been doing to yourself. You've over-explained, you've over-invested, you've bent your tone, your timing, your truth all for someone who rewards you with ambiguity and keeps you locked in a waiting room of almost. But here's the secret most men never unlock. She didn't do this to you. You allowed it. Not because you're weak, but because you wanted to believe love meant staying. You wanted to believe that if you were kind enough, patient enough, strong enough, she'd see it. But the truth, She already sees it. She just knows she doesn't have to match it, because you made it free. No standard, no boundary, no pause, no refusal. You gave everything and made it cost her nothing. That's the mistake. That's what you must never repeat. Because the man who gives without standards is not generous, he is starving. He is hoping to be chosen, to be seen, to be told that he is finally enough. But enough for who? For someone who flakes, who ghosts, who plays hot and cold with your heart like it's a switch. Enough for someone who only shows up when you stop reaching. No. Let her leave. Let her test you and fail. Let her misunderstand your silence. Let her call you too much, too distant, too cold. Let her say what she must. Because the truth is, she didn't break you. She revealed what you were too afraid to protect. And now you rebuild. Not by numbing, not by raging, not by playing the same game with the next girl. You rebuild by setting the line and keeping it. Not once, not for a week, but for life. She says she's not sure you step back. She ghosts and returns. You stay quiet. She tests your patience with disrespect. You end the conversation, not out of punishment but out of peace, because that's what you protect now. Your peace, your standard, your time, and above all, your sense of self. You are not here to prove your worth to women who profit from your confusion. You are here to see clearly, ruthlessly, without apology who sees you back, without games. You don't need 10 chances. You don't need closure. You don't need her to explain what you already feel in your bones. What you need is the strength to leave before you're broken, before you twist yourself into someone she can't even respect. Because that's what men forget. She doesn't fall in love with the version of you that bends. She falls in love with the version of you that walks quietly, powerfully when something doesn't sit right. The man who doesn't need chaos to feel alive. The man who can sit in silence, alone, and not feel abandoned. The man who chooses himself, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. You've waited long enough. Now it's time. What's the boundary you're finally ready to set, not for her, but for you? What are you willing to lose, to never lose yourself again? Let's hear it in the comments. Because the next time she goes quiet, you won't panic. You'll pause, you'll smile, and you'll remember she didn't break you. She revealed what you were too afraid to protect.